systems go. Clear for liftoff.
What is going on? What's going on, everybody? We're back for a Wednesday edition of the NBA show. As always, joined by my man Matt. How's it going tonight, Matt? Pretty wild games last night for sure.
Yeah, wild games. I was just off last night, so I pivoted off of Jalen Williams, and I was in that pivoting off of Jalen Williams to Omax crew. Omax coming in at less than 1%. Jalen Williams obviously stayed pretty highly owned, but he just went nuclear off the bench. Didn't even matter for me, though, because I was heavy on the Philly game and kind of didn't need to be heavy on that Philly game. The guys busted. San Antonio rolled. So my night was kind of RIP with that game going down in flames. Happy to get back at it tonight. Was telling you before we started about kind of 2 nights ago, playing Yang over Hugo Gonzalez. So been a little bit of a rough start to the week. Luckily, I had a nice finish to last week, so hoping we can carry that over into Wednesday. I love doing these shows with you. Only 4 games tonight, so pretty game theory type of slate I think we're dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be a pretty quick show for us tonight, at least breaking down the game. So if you guys have any questions, we could definitely spend a little bit more time getting to it. But yeah, pretty brutal run out for the Sixers guys. Grimes was terrible. Maxey was pretty good from a permanent basis, but just couldn't keep the game close. But they'll get a chance to bounce back tonight, and they'll be even thinner than they were last night in a much better matchup. But we'll get to that game in a little bit. So it's up to some people in chat first. We got Jordan Newens in here as always. Gang Green, Philly fan, Parabay, BKG, Axtron, and 8D, Mighty Saint, Ricky Rose, Wins a Lot, William, Evan, Casey. I got Jake. I said it. Hit that like button, please. Appreciate that. Juice, Deacon, Marquis, Money Moj, and Mr. Mike's Daddy. So you kind of alluded to it up the top, a little bit more game theory, but in terms of strategy going into a slate like this, where there's a lot of value, and then a few spin-ups to kind of dig through, but a couple of games that should remain close. What's the general strategy you have going into a slate like tonight?
Yeah, I think kind of I was alluding to a minute ago. I think the game theory aspect of this slate is really pertinent just because it's really small and ownership is very concentrated. We've seen that. I've talked to you a bunch about it on these shows. Ownership just continues to be extremely concentrated in NBA DFS, and it's a similar story tonight where there's a few guys getting a ton of ownership. Then obviously it spreads out a little bit, but I think getting off the beaten path with, not your entire lineup, but with a player or 2 or potentially 3 can really set you apart on these slates. And again, with Sims kind of ruling the roost in NBA DFS right now, ownership is just going to continue to be more and more concentrated.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like now more than ever, you need to really kind of think through how you want to be building and not just blindly trusting projections. I think we've kind of done a pretty good job pinpointing some of that. I know that last week, the night when you had the 40K win was a perfect example because that was a Najee Marshall night. And, we were pretty on top of fading him, but the field still wanted to play him at whatever he was, 60-something%. And I think last night was kind of another good example where a guy like Grimes, so I definitely played a ton of, like he was over projecting around the industry, I thought, just because he's not a great permanent producer and people were pretty confident in his role. Obviously, that was kind of like the worst possible run out, but still the point kind of remains that you need to be looking at it from that perspective a little bit more and just not be super comfortable just blindly trusting the projection. So we'll definitely kind of go through that. If you have anything else you want to build on there.
Yeah, just to your point, and you were a little bit even underselling it. Najee Marshall that night came in at 85% owned, and that I think it was a 7-7-7. There's so much power in fading a guy like that. if there's reasons to fade him at that high of ownership. Like 60% is high, no doubt. But when you're talking about like 85% owned for a guy like Najee Marshall, that's not like a stud that's just going to get there every single night because he's going to have the ball in his hands the entire game. There's just so much power in that in NBA DFS. And there's going to be players that are that highly owned tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely try to pinpoint those ones as we get through the slate a little bit. But let's kick things off with a game that should be pretty exciting. OKC at New York Knicks. Both these teams on a back-to-back. The Thunders rested Shea and Hartenstein last night, so they'll get those guys back tonight. And then the Knicks will be without Mitchell Robinson. Surprisingly close spread. I think Vegas is giving the Knicks a good amount of credit here, mainly just because it's a home game. But I kind of think that the Thunder kind of have more ways to win this one. But yeah, we should expect it to remain close throughout. So I think that there's definitely a lot to talk through here. This is one of the more exciting games on the slate, I would say. I'm kind of excited about that Charlotte-Boston one, just a good test for Charlotte going up against a really good team in the East. But yeah, it should be a fun one. Going to be a really tough test for the Knicks offensively. Thunder are the best defense in the NBA. They have some of the most capable defenders at slowing down Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. So I could see this being a game where the role players come up big if the game does stay close, or if the Knicks win this one. I kind of would expect like OG, Mikal, Josh Hart, maybe in some of the bench guys to have pretty big games here. Not necessarily sure that would translate to DFS in particular, because I think this game will be pretty low scoring. But yeah, what are you looking at in this one? Should be a pretty fun game, though. I'm sure to kick things off.
Yeah, it should be a good game from a real life perspective, if nothing else. For DFS wise, I don't see a ton here. Like from the Knicks, Cat I think is okay at 8,600 with Mitchell Robinson out, but it's not a good matchup, and he's been so inconsistent this year. Like I don't love him. Brunson, I think, is strictly a tournament play at no ownership. Like he's one of those guys, I was kind of just alluding to, like with Tyrese Maxey going to be, 85% owned. Brunson is going to be 2, 3, 4% owned. So like, yeah, Maxey looks a lot better, and most of the time he outscores Brunson here, but not all the time. So at what point does it make sense to play a guy like Brunson? Not exactly sure, but that's really his only role on this slate for me personally. I like Josh Hart the most out of any guy from New York. I'm with you. I think that if the Knicks keep this competitive, it's more like a gritty game. They're getting it done on the margins. Hart is really good on the margins. So he's my favorite player from New York. I don't love this game from a DFS perspective at all. The only guy from OKC is Shea, but like, I don't know. He's getting a little bit of ownership also, not nearly as much as Maxey. So I think like he's the most reasonable pivot off of Maxey, but with him getting even a little bit of ownership, I'd rather just play Maxey or one of the guys that's just getting no ownership. So I'm mostly out on this game. I think we see it pretty similarly in like 150 type settings. How do you see it?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like anything probably 3 to 5 entries and below, I'd probably be on the underweight to fade side. I think if you were making a case for somebody in this game, I think you kind of hit it. It would be Shea and Josh Hart. I do think that I'll get over the field on some of these guys in MME, though. I like what I've seen from Shea coming back. Looks like he's pretty full. Got the MVP race heating up a little bit, so he probably wants to win that.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, and I don't view anybody on the Knicks as like really good stoppers at defending a guy like Shea. It should be a lot of Mikal Bridges on him, and Shea's cooked them. He did really well against the Knicks last year. Averaged 36 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists per game, 52 DK points. I don't necessarily think that would be great for tonight, but the upside definitely is there. We saw it in the Denver game, and he didn't even play the last 5 minutes because he didn't play in overtime. But the thing that was most interesting I saw with Shea was his role since returning in those, small sample 2 games, but he's been like a usage monster. His involvement percentage jumped from 51.6% on the season to 64.6% over his last 2, and the on-ball role up from 37% to 43.5%. So better role for Shea over the last 2 games. Not sure how sticky that will be long-term, but I think that's something to keep an eye on because this is a pretty good price tag for him. We're used to seeing him probably in like the 11K range most nights. So I do like him a little bit. I think Hartenstein is a guy to sprinkle in as well because it's a much softer matchup with no Mitch Rob. And then I also think I have a little bit of interest in these these bench guys, I think there's a good chance one of these guys has a decent night against the Knicks because it's kind of the same thing for New York. They're pretty vulnerable at giving up 3-pointers. So I think Joe, McCain, and Wiggins are guys I would all consider, and even Caruso a little bit because he can get hot in a hurry. But it would be a max one of anybody not named Shea for me, and I don't think I'm even considering Chet on a back-to-back. As for the Knicks, though, I agree. I think Hart is my favorite option at 6.6K with the shooting guard small forward eligibility. He had a good game last night, 12, 7, and 7 and 5 stocks. I think that he's got the most upside of the secondary Knicks. I also think that's going to be Hartenstein guarding Josh Hart. So that'd be a good spot to attack because I think that Hartenstein's just going to be leaving him open a lot on the 3-point line. Just kind of dare him to be the one that beats the Thunder. The Cat did have some really big games against OKC last year too. So I'm leaving the door open for him because it's still a good price tag for the upside we have seen from him in the past. And I think he's playing a little bit better as of late. Minutes have been way down, so I think that there's a chance he could bounce back minutes-wise in a really big game. Double check chat, see if there's any questions. No Wallace. Yeah, I think Wallace is another guy I would sprinkle in a little bit. I think I'd be fine with him, but the role will be pretty bad with Hartenstein and with Shea returning. Yeah, I agree with Wardo. Shamet was another guy that I'd kind of circled a little bit in terms of how he compares to the value plays. Don't think that he's up there with, the Memphis guys or the Philly guys, but I would definitely have a little bit of interest in Shamet at the very least and some prop bets. I think that he'd be the guy that could get hot off the bench. All right, next game, Utah at Philly. This looks like potentially the game of the night in terms of stacking things up for DFS. Utah's headed to Philly coming off of an embarrassing loss. The Sixers are at home against the Spurs. They were getting booed by their fans, and even apparently some fans were getting thrown out of the game because they were telling the owner of the Sixers to sell the team. So really embarrassing game for them, but should be a really good bounce back spot against a Jazz team that ranks dead last in defensive rating. Sixers are bottom 8 in defensive rating over the last 2 weeks and one of the worst rim defenses and rebound teams in the NBA. Definitely of interest in this game, but talk me through how you view in the Philly stuff because this will definitely be a spot that is unavoidable for DFS.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to get away from Philly here. Utah, I think kind of, at least for me, like Utah is really hard to get any of outside of, maybe Ace Bailey, Filipowski, but like no Utah player is going to be a priority for me. And that's even with a lot of Philly being like ultimate priorities on this slate, starting with Tyrese Maxey, 10-3. We just don't have a lot of spend up options tonight, and he should cook Utah. If Utah can keep this game even semi-competitive, I mean, he's just going to smash here. So I think there are game theory like avenues and ways to get off of him here, but from a pure projection standpoint, he's a lock in all formats. Certainly if you're playing cash games, he's like the first guy you're playing. Then you go down in pricing to Quentin Grimes again. Doesn't feel good. And he's one of these guys that's going to be so highly owned that like Quentin Grimes at 90%, like I get it. He projects really well. It's a great spot. Like from a projection standpoint, I think you just play him, but that's the type of ownership and type of player where I think at least talking about fading him makes sense in tournaments. Justin Edwards going to be popular. He makes sense. Trendon Watford, 3,600. He looks pretty good here. Andre Drummond, 5,200. I think after Klingon, he looks like the best center on the slate. He's just going to smash in this spot. Again, if Utah can keep this game even semi-competitive, it's hard to see if someone like Drummond not just having a monster game in this spot. Now, the blowout concern is real. I think playing that angle on a small slate like this makes some sense, but Philly is missing a lot of their really good players, so I don't trust them to blow anyone out right now. So I'm not going to play it like that. And in that case, I like these guys a lot, namely Drummond and Maxey.
Yeah, I think I'll be playing this game straight up too. I just don't really trust Philly to blow out even Utah. And I think that Utah will be more inclined to play things a little bit more competitively. Keontae returning definitely helps them. And I actually think that, adding EJ Harkless to the starting lineup helps them a lot to be more competitive because he's actually a pretty good defender. I don't know if you watched the game against the Nuggets, but he was literally the one that was guarding Jokic. So it was pretty crazy to see because he's a small guard, but definitely a lot of like one of those guys that has a lot of heart and will play hard defense. But yeah, I agree with you on the Sixers stuff though. You got to be starting your lineups with probably 2 to 3 of these guys, I would imagine. starting with Maxey and then Grimes and then probably Drummond. But I mean, I changed the ownership right here to high stakes single entry. You see that you got Maxey at 90%, 92% for Grimes, 61 for Drummond. Even Barlow's showing up at 47%, and then it kind of drops off. Edwards will be high owned as well, but Edwards is one guy that I'm like, I would be totally fine eating the chalk. I feel like he, to me, is a lock in single entry contests and satellites, things like that. I'd probably be starting my lineups with Maxey, Drummond, and Edwards, and then you're starting to make a decision on Grimes. I think if you're not playing Grimes, you should probably be playing Campaign, unless they start all three of those guys, which I don't think that they will because it's just too many guards on the court. But yeah, I'd probably be setting a max 2 rule of Maxey, Grimes, and Campaign, and that way it would kind of give me a couple more combinations of Maxey plus Grimes, Maxey plus Payne. I doubt I'd get a ton of Grimes plus Payne with no Maxey, but if you did get those lineups, then you're probably getting Shea in them, I would imagine. So a little bit of a different way to approach the slate for sure. But yeah, totally fine with Drummond. I think it's a great matchup for him to bounce back against Kyle Filipowski, one of the worst defenders in the league. Definitely a guy that can give up a ton of rebounds. I think Drummond has really, really appealing upside tonight. And then Edwards, I'm very into. I haven't projected more. Like, I don't know what the minutes are going to look like, but I would imagine it ranges from 24 to like 28 if he's starting. And if that's the case, I'd have him projected in like the 24 to 25 DraftKings point range, just because matchup's really good. His G League stats have been solid as well, and he has been a guy that has fantasy relevance at times in his career, mainly last season. I don't really know what to do with like the Barlow, Watford, Bona grouping. Like, I think all these guys should be in consideration because they're going to be really low owned. Well, not Barlow, but Watford for sure will be low owned. I'd probably be setting a max 2 rule of Barlow, Watford, Barlow, Watford, and Edwards. Definitely max 1 of Bona and Drummond. And Bona is another guy that honestly that might provide you enough leverage off of a chalky guy off of Drummond, because Drummond did look terrible last night, and I don't think that they're guaranteed to play him like 28 to 30 minutes. Bona is, just as likely to have a pretty big game like Drummond, but he's going to be a fraction of the ownership. Like, I don't know if it's less than 1%, probably more like 6 to 8% as we get closer to lock, but that'd definitely be a pivot I'm looking to make for sure.
Do you think he's just as likely to have a big game, or like at ownership, you're willing to play him?
At ownership, I'm willing to play him. Okay. I just think that I wouldn't be so confident that Drummond's like a 60% owned play tonight, just because he's going to get in the start.
I guess my question, like, on that note, is Grimes. Like, I just keep going. Like, I'm totally with you on Edwards. Like, he's 3K and a small forward. Grimes is mid 4K range and at a guard position where we have a lot of good guards tonight. Yeah. Like the Memphis guys, Maxey. We talked about guys we liked already. I mean, I guess my question to you, like, do you think Grimes ever is worth being like 85, 90% owned? That seems crazy to me. And I get it. He projects really well.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely not a 100% chance that he's going to be optimal, but I would probably say in single entry, you just eat that chalk. Like, if you're building like 5 teams, you fade him in 1.
That's fair.
But like for
right
MME, like right with the field. But I think for MME, I would probably prefer to come in at like 70%, maybe like 65%, because there are some pretty decent other like point guard, shooting guard options that will be direct pivots, and then also a little bit more expensive. So it kind of changes the build around a little bit. Yeah, definitely. I think that's like kind of the main decision point tonight. The thing that's making me really just want to play him a ton is that it's Utah. They're terrible against guards. Yeah. I do think that it's a pretty good bounce back spot for him.
Yeah, and if enough people don't want to play him, like if he's 75% owned, like I want all the Grimes. If he's like 95% owned, I want none of the Grimes. That's a big difference. You know what I mean? And we just don't know exactly what he'll be. But I'm more with you than against you. That in single entry stuff, I think you just eat the bullet. Like if you're playing a bunch of lineups, then you start to think about getting away from him. And if you're playing 150, no issue getting a little bit under the field, like you said.
Yeah. Didn't really touch on Utah, but I do have interest in 2 guys in particular. One is Keontae George. Really made a statement in the loss to Denver, was pretty much back to like his early season self. 7.3 minutes of touch time in that one, got up to 30 minutes. Kind of kicking myself in that one because I was projecting him for like 30 minutes, but then ended up coming down a little bit because I thought that the blowout concerns were a little bit too big to play him that much. But I mean, there's a chance that his minutes could range anywhere from like 28 to 34 in a close game. So I kind of think that he's pretty good at his price tag, 7.7K, just because we just saw him go off for a big game. And I think that he just has a ton of momentum this season. So I think if the game does stay close and if you have like 4 of the main rotation pieces on Philly, it makes a little bit of sense to me to get some Utah guys, and Keontae would be the first guy I look to. And then Filipowski would be the next one. He's really expensive now, and the minutes haven't been good, but it is a good matchup. I'm not really too scared off about Andre Drummond on defense, and with no Embiid in there, should be able to stay out of foul risk. That's kind of been a big concern for Filipowski this season. The minutes really have not been great because they're trying to get Oscar Tshiebwe more minutes, but I think that this could be a spot where he has at least a good per minute game. So I have a little bit of interest in those two guys in particular. Don't think this would be a slate to go to EJ Harkless. I'm kind of off of Ace Bailey right now. I think that he's a little too expensive. Hasn't really put together a full game where he's kind of, consistent all the way through. And I think with Keontae back, just kind of hurts his overall upside. So I'm really just going to flip and Keontae tonight.
Yeah, I get that. I guess my only case for Ace would just be like his ceiling is still high for his price point, even if like he's overpriced for his median. And with Keontae back in this game, potentially, being closer than some might expect, if that happens, maybe you see a couple extra minutes from Ace, but that's kind of just dreaming. So yeah, I get it. Like I don't think if you're playing one lineup, I don't think you get to anyone from Utah, but it does make sense to start looking at them the more Philly you play because you want this game to be competitive.
Yeah. I see a question about blowout run. I pulled up the rotation last night. So the blowout lineup had Jabari Walker, Trenton Watford, Justin Edwards, Tyrese Martin, Dalen Terry, and Tyrese Martin. So no, Bona probably would not be out there, but that could change. I just don't think that they would have him out there. I feel like it'd probably be those. Maybe Justin Edwards is not in a blowout, but if he is, that's kind of like the perfect storm for him. All right, we'll jump into
it's also like in blowout run, like they're not necessarily matching up. So like they don't need a center out there in blowout run if they're happy with the guys they got out there.
Yeah, for sure. Any love for Svi? Not for me. Doesn't sound like Matt's on him either.
No, sir.
All right, next game on the slate should be a fun one. Really big test for Charlotte heading into Boston as last time I checked, they're 6.5 point underdogs. Yep, 6.5 points, and they will be without Grant Williams and Tijon Salon. Otherwise, fully healthy. Kobe White will be back for this one. All the guys that played last night will be back. LaMelo, Khan, Miller, Bridges, Moussa Diabate all in. And then for the Celtics, Jaylen Brown and Neemias Queta will be back tonight. And Jason Tatum sounds like his return is very close. I keep hearing Friday as the day that he's going to be making his return to Boston. So I'll have to keep an eye on that and how that looks moving forward. But definitely pretty exciting news if you are a Boston fan for sure. But yeah, this should be a pretty fun game. These are two of the best rebounding teams in the league right now. Boston's really turned a corner, maybe since the acquisition of Nikola Vucevic. That's kind of helped them. But these are also two of the best three-point offenses in the NBA. Hornets are second in offensive three-point frequency, and Boston is fourth. Boston is a little bit worse at defending the three-point line. They really look to take away the rim. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do get some big scoring from 1 to 2 of these guys in Charlotte. I wouldn't actually be surprised if they keep this game really close and potentially win this one. The starting 5 of the LaMelo, Khan, Miller, Bridges, Diabate are, I think they're now 19-2 when they all play together, and they have the best net rating of any 5-man lineup. So pretty big test for them. I do want to take shots on all of those, mainly the 4 guys. I think I'm off of Diabate tonight, but I do have interest in LaMelo, Khan, Miller, and Bridges. To me, this feels like a Khan or Brandon Miller night. I think that their matchups will be a little bit softer than what LaMelo faces. LaMelo did have a quick trip to the locker room as well last night, came back shortly after. It looked like it was just kind of like a groin shot, but to me, it just feels a little tough to play him on a back-to-back at 8.8K when we have so many other guard options. But I will say that he has done really well against Derek White in the past. He's averaging 60.3 points per 75 in like a decently big samples. I think that the scoring will definitely be there for him. So I do want to take some stabs at him, but I prefer a lot of these other guards. But it's definitely a Con and Brandon Miller night for me. What say you about the Hornets and Celtics?
Yeah, so this game kind of reminds me of the OKC Knicks game from a DFS perspective and a real life perspective, where I think both games are really good from a watching viewpoint. From the Boston side, Jaylen Brown to me looks like, I've been on Jaylen Brown a bunch recently. He continues to just be productive night in and night out. He's got both the shooting guard and small forward eligibility, which I love, easy to roster. He looks like a priority for me on this slate. Again, we don't have a ton of spend up options. He's one of my favorite plays overall tonight. So I like Jaylen Brown a ton here. And what looks to be like a statement game for Boston, a game that should be competitive, as you mentioned. This starting five for Charlotte has been elite. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see Charlotte come in and win this game. But if that happens, I still expect Brown to play really well, because I would be very surprised if Charlotte just goes in here and rolls tonight. So I like JB a lot here. From the Charlotte side, they remind me of the Knicks here. The Boston is like OKC, where JB is like SGA, and Charlotte is like the Knicks, where I don't hate any of their guys, but it's hard to say any of them are priorities for me. Like LaMelo looks like Jalen Brunson, and that he's going to be 2% owned. So you tell me that, and then a guy like Maxey is going to be 80%, and SGA is going to be 30, 40%. Like, I think there's a role for LaMelo on this slate. But from just a projection standpoint, as you mentioned, really, really hard to get to him on a back-to-back at 8,800 in this spot. So the only case for me would be ownership. I do think this game is close. So I like Miller. I like Khan. I like Miles Bridges, but hard for me to prioritize any of them in this spot. I think if you're doing so, you're bypassing projection, and I think that's fine on a small slate like this. We talked about it earlier, getting away from the ownership. I think I'm fine with it here. I'm just not going to sit here and say, like, this is who you need to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you on the Jaylen Brown stuff. Pretty easy to get up to him with all the value tonight. And him having small forward is big, because I don't think I'd want to use a guard spot on him, but probably fine with that. But yeah, I think it's a perfect comparison comparing this game to OKC and the Knicks, in the sense that the salaries and matchups all kind of are very similar. So I definitely agree with you there. But yeah, I'm going to probably be getting a little bit over the field on the Charlotte guys, just because if the ownership is right, we have it right now. Sorry, that's high stakes. Let me change this. So yeah, low double digits. I still think that's fine. Probably ending up like around like 13 to 15% on all these guys feels okay to me, but I would probably be a max 2 of Charlotte. And you honestly could consider a max 1. It's a really low team total that they have, but I think max 2 is fine, because I kind of feel like this game has a better chance to hit the over. And then same thing for the Celtics. I think it's just going to be a max 1 of Derek White and Pritchard, max 1 of Keita and Vooch for sure, if you're considering them. I'm not really considering either of them tonight, because Diabate is a really, really good rebounder. So pretty much just Derek White or Jaylen Brown for me.
Yeah, we see that very similarly.
Cool. Miller or Filipowski, it's always a little bit tougher to answer these 1v1s, because it's kind of just like a projection thing. But I would say if you're playing a ton of Sixers guys, then to me it makes a little bit of sense to go with Filipowski. But I'm sure that projections would probably say Brandon Miller. Any input there?
No, I'm kind of with you. The 1v1s are tough, because it also matters like who else you're playing in your lineup, as you mentioned. Like in a vacuum, I'm playing Brandon Miller over Filipowski, but I don't think the projection is that far off, and it's not where like you're crazy to play Filipowski over Miller. It's exactly what you said.
Yeah. All right, last game on the slate. Got this one really quickly, only on, where are we at? About 30 minutes. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll get to it at the end of this one. But Portland at Memphis, this game is definitely going to provide us with a lot of value, because this will be pretty much as thin as we've seen Memphis since they've got all these guys from the trade deadline. There might have been 1 or 2 other games where they only had 8, but tonight they'll have 9 guys available, with Cedric Howard, Santi Aldama, Scottie Pippen Jr., and Ty Jerome all out, as well as Zach Edey, who's done for the year, and then John Morant probably going to be done for the year. They also re-signed Ryan Rupert to a 2-way deal, so that makes 9 bodies available tonight, and the minutes will be a little bit more condensed. We've actually seen a couple guys from Memphis get above 30 minutes recently. But a really good spot for Portland here against a team that is struggling defensively. Their Grizzlies are bottom 10 in defense over the last 2 weeks, but they're exceptionally bad at rebounding the ball. So I think this is just a massive spot for Donovan Clingan here. But Memphis is also a really big three-point funnel, which is great for Portland because they are top 3 in three-point frequency this season. The Blazers are really bad in transition, mainly because they are one of the worst teams at taking care of the ball. I believe they're dead last in turnover percentage. So a little bit of scoring upside for whoever would be the guy that kind of hits that checks that box off for transition scoring. But yeah, it sounds like Denny Avdia will be returning tonight, although on a minutes limit. So break down what you've seen from Portland, and then if you want to dive into the Memphis stuff afterwards.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if that's what the reports are, that he's going to be returning on a minutes limit tonight.
I don't think that's official, but he's been doing on-court stuff for like a week straight and then was upgraded to questionable. So I think that tonight's the night.
Okay, because that's obviously very important. And the longer we wait to get that news, I think matters on this slate, because if he somehow doesn't play, and again, he's missed 5 games in a row, or at least 4 games in a row, this might be the 5th. I still don't think it's a guarantee he plays tonight. If he's out, I want Drew Holiday. I think he looks elite here. And if we don't get that news till after lock, Holiday won't be nearly as owned as he should be with all the good guard plays. So, again, I think this is where the game theory kind of plays off, and it's Portland, because we don't know about Avdia. A little bit less intrigued with you saying he's more likely to play than not, but still questionable, hasn't been upgraded or anything yet. So we'll just have to wait and see. If he's in on a minutes limit, tough for me to get to anything on Portland except for, as you mentioned, Clingan, who looks like, one of, if not the best overall play on the slate outside of the Philly guys. He's just too cheap on DK still. Monster game after monster game. Really good spot against Memphis here. Hard for me to get away from Clingan tonight. He just looks elite in this spot. Memphis very undersized. He's, again, a really good play regardless of Denny. And the other guys, I would want Denny to be out. Like Jeremy Grant, I think looks okay. The field continues to get to him. I like him as a placeholder, if nothing else. Gives you exposure to this late game. You can always get off him, because we certainly want Memphis exposure here. Memphis looks like maybe the best team on the slate outside of Philly, or right there with Philly. Their 3 guards, Clayton, Small, and Cam Spencer, all look good to me here. Clayton probably looking the best as the cheapest option right now, but we've seen Small be really productive. He'll be back tonight. Cam Spencer, 5,100. All 3 of these guys look really, really good here, in my opinion. Max, huge letdown last night, but he was really, really good for me on Friday night when I had the big night playing him over Najee. He outscored Najee by 30 points that night. So no issue getting back to him at 5,100. He'll play good minutes here because they just lack big men. Meshack at 4,200, I think, has a role on this slate. Taylor Hendricks, your boy, 4,700. He'd been pretty good. So, yeah, Memphis is a team I'm going to want a lot of exposure to. And then Portland is Clingan, and then everyone else. But the everyone else becomes really in play for me if Denny is out.
Yep, agree with you. I think you'd definitely be getting pretty decent leverage on if you get the Drew Holiday stuff right, if Denny were to miss. As it stood right now with Denny in, I counted 10 guys that have some sort of guard eligibility that I preferred over Drew Holiday, just because he's pretty expensive. But really nothing negative to say about him, though, because he should be pretty good in this matchup. So I agree with you there. But yeah, Donovan Clingan, probably the best center play on the slate. Him and Drummond, I think, are the top 2 by a pretty wide margin. I just have nothing negative to say about his matchup. I think he's going to absolutely smash tonight. I have a take on Omax Prosper. I don't really know if there's numbers that could back this up, but I just feel like in these types of matchups where there's a big bodied center on the other side, he struggles against. You see against Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, Naz Reid couldn't really do much, although the shot volume was really low. But a team like Dallas, where I believe they might have been missing some of the guys. He did really well against. Indy's another team that doesn't really have a true center. Sacramento.
Well, he's not very good, so that would make sense.
Yeah, but he then to kind of counter that point, he did go for 25 and 5 against the same Portland team. So has shown upside against the same team. I want to see if Clingan played in that game, because I know that he had been missing a few games. But yeah, I mean, he's just going to be so undersized against a guy like Clingan tonight. I don't really know if I necessarily love it, but the there were 4 guys that stood out for Memphis as like the best per minute producers this season alone. You kind of add some more sample over the last 2 seasons and it shrinks a little bit, but GG, Cam Spencer, Javon Small, and Omax are the best point per minute producers, all in like the 1.5 to like 1.3 per minute range. I agree with you on Walter Clayton, though. He's come on along really nicely in the last few games. 9 and 14 assists in his last 2. Played 30-plus minutes in that game against Indy as well. So I think that he's probably my favorite option on the Memphis side tonight. How I have it ranked, and then you could, if you want to go through yours, you can. I'll do some rules at the very end here. But for me, it would be Walter Clayton, Javon Small, Cam Spencer, so all 3 of the guards. Then it would be probably Omax, GG, Hendricks, and then Rupert, Wells, and Meshack, if you want to go through yours real quick.
No, yeah, it's really similar to yours. Unfortunately, it is the 3 guards for me with Clayton, Small, Spencer. And then, man, Omax he's tough because he's not cheap and he's getting ownership. And I'm kind of with you on facing the big men, but he's still going to play a bunch. So I'll have him 4th. I do think that like after the guards, it's all jumbled. So you could kind of have it any order you want, especially with ownership included there. Like Hendricks, Meshack, Omax, GG is like the best of all of them, but he's the most expensive. His minutes certainly aren't secure. So I think that there's question marks with all these guys, but they're all in play. Clayton, I think after talking it out, is easily my favorite.
Yeah, he looks really good. Kind of sucks that he's only shooting guard eligible, but I don't think that matters too much on this slate. So some rules I'm considering for the guys that want to set rules for this team. It would be max 2 of Small, Spencer, and Clayton. I would be max 2 of GG, Prosper, and Hendricks, and then max 1 Wells, Rupert, and Meshack. And I think that pretty much covers it all. But yeah, the wings look like the worst play. Like the small forward guys are easily the worst plays on Memphis, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Clayton or Grimes, any take there? I feel like that's really close, actually.
I mean, it's tough because like Grimes is the better play from a projection standpoint because he projects for more fantasy points and he's 400 cheaper, but he's also going to be 90%. So I feel like I have to go with Grimes, even though I don't like it. How about you?
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think it's mainly just the pricing thing. I haven't built teams yet, but I would imagine pricing is going to be pretty tight tonight when building teams.
Yeah, and I will say to your point about the guard situation, like, man, there are certainly a bunch of guards right now, like 10 you mentioned, that look better than Holiday. And even if Denny is out, it's not like Holiday would become the best guard on the slate. But I think his ownership would be low enough if we get that in his after lock where he would be certainly worth having in tournaments. That's all I'll say.
Yep. Yeah, Rupert, he did sign. He signed a 2-way. He's back. And then, yeah, Taylor Hendricks did just get downgraded. So could be 8 bodies available tonight for Memphis. But we'll see. They still have, like, Coward, Jerome, and Pippen are all doubtful. So there's not a guarantee that all 3 of those guys were to be out. But if Hendricks missed, then it's like you got to play a lot of Memphis guys tonight. That's just 8 bodies that's like the golden number.
Yeah, Omax with Hendricks out starts to look not like you can't get away from him, but starts to look a lot better. Yeah. I don't love it, but Memphis is a priority on this slate. They just have to be.
Yep. I would probably rule against this tonight. I'd probably be playing Maxey if you're just playing one lineup. That's like the core building block for me.
If you were playing one lineup, would you be more apt to get off Maxey or Grimes?
Grimes for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. Because the thing is, like, and we talk about this a lot, there just aren't really pivots off of Maxey. Like, there's a couple guys, but there are pivots off of Grimes. Like, yeah, those guys are project for 3 fantasy points less, but like, there's still a bunch of guys that project within like the 3 to 5 fantasy point range as Grimes. You don't get that with Maxey, so I'm totally with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really like the only comparable option is Shea.
That's it.
Yeah, and you might be giving up like the similar amount of projection going from
good call,
from Maxey to Shea. So
and also like Shea is still going to be owned. You can find pivots in the Grimes range that are going to be pretty low owned because there's so many good guard plays tonight.
Yep. All right. Well, if that's all the questions we have, we'll get out of here. But yeah, any closing thoughts before we close this thing down?
No, should be a fun slate. Kind of a sprint slate starting at 7 and ending at 8. So kind of weird that we don't have more games on a Wednesday, but is what it is. I'm done guessing what the NBA schedule is going to look like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. It seems like they're kind of condensing the games onto Tuesdays and Thursdays now, which makes it a little bit tougher for me having to, write up 9 games versus the 4 games and talking with you on these Wednesday slates. So it's always a nice little breather in between. But yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with title, and then I believe we have a MMA show tomorrow as well. Obviously, all the golf content is up on the site now. If not, will be later. And then Matt will be back on Friday with Ham. But yeah, that should do it for this one. Good luck tonight, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow.